Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. On our way down the mountain, lightning flashed. Yesterday, I commented about a couple of places I didn't get to see on my trip to Israel about 25 years ago, but I was excited that one place we did go was Mount Carmel. Perhaps we all connect with some Bible stories more than others. And one that has been one of my favorites for a long time is the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal on top of Mount Carmel. This week and next week, we're going on a tour of Israel, kind of. Our goal is to visit some of the significant places in Israel, but our focus is centered on places where the actual geography is significant to the story of what happened there. Maybe more, the location, the geography itself adds to the meaning and the theology of the story of God and God's people. Today, travel with me back to Mount Carmel. They were troubled times in Israel, and all you need to know to realize that is that the queen at the time was named Jezebel. Even today, she is such a paradigm of wickedness that no one names their daughter Jezebel. I will say that in some ways, it wasn't really her fault. In those days, alliances between nations were often cemented through marriages. A king in one nation would marry off his daughter to the king of another nation to ensure peace between the nations. That was the case with Jezebel. In fact, she had been born and raised in Phoenicia, which was on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, sort of where Lebanon is today. So she was from a foreign country, and quite naturally had been brought up to worship other gods. Even more, it seems that she was rather devout in her belief in her gods. So when she married Ahab, Israel's king, she brought her own gods with her. Furthermore, just like we encourage people today to speak out about their faith in God, Jezebel did that about her own gods, spreading the worship of Baal throughout Israel. She even convinced her husband Ahab, and together they had shrines to Baal erected all over Israel. Now, let me remind you that the first commandment is to have no other gods. Jezebel and Ahab were leading their people away from God and toward Baal. Well, God wasn't happy about any of this, and neither was his prophet Elijah. Elijah confronted Ahab and told him that if he didn't change his ways, it wouldn't rain in the land of Israel until he did. So began a 3-year drought. Food became scarce, and everyone suffered. Still, Ahab and Jezebel didn't relent. So Elijah called a summit meeting. He challenged the 400 prophets of Baal to meet him on the summit of Mount Carmel. Now, this is where the geography comes into play. Mount Carmel is really a series of mountains looking out over the Mediterranean Sea. This area of Israel is in the northern part, as close to Phoenicia as it can be, and so it was in large part the headquarters of the Baal cult. In this place, everyone knew Baal had home court advantage. There were 400 prophets of Baal on one side and Elijah on the other. Elijah concocted an inventive plan. He suggested that each side erect an altar, sacrifice a bull to their god, and then ask the god to send down fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice. Well, the prophets of Baal did that, and then they cried out to Baal for fire. Nothing happened. They shouted louder and cut themselves in delirium all day long while Elijah taunted them that perhaps Baal was asleep. Again, that went on all day. Finally, it was Elijah's turn, and he prepared the altar, sacrificed a bull, and then had people pour an abundance of water over it all. Then Elijah prayed one prayer for God to send fire down, and God sent so much that it consumed the bull, the stone altar, and even the water that filled the trench around the altar. If you wanted a demonstration of which God was real, then you had it. There on top of Mount Carmel, the answer to God versus Baal was clear as could be. Frankly, this didn't change things overnight in Israel. Jezebel threatened to have Elijah killed, and he fled until God strengthened him and he went back. Still, there is one more thing about the geography here that is important as the story ends. You see, if there is rain anywhere in Israel, it rains on Mount Carmel. The way it juts out into the sea means that moisture is dropped there, if anywhere. Remember that there had been a 3-year drought. Well, after the confrontation, Elijah looked out from the top of that mountain, out over the sea, and saw a cloud rising up from the water. Not long after that, it was overhead, and then it was raining. God had demonstrated who was God, and finally the drought could end. That day in Israel 25 years ago, the day we visited Mount Carmel, it was a dreary day, gray, cloudy, with a misty rain. We walked around the top of that mountain until it was time to go. Then we loaded ourselves into the bus and headed down. There on the mountain, where God had sent down fire, I looked out of the window and saw a lightning flash. Our guide had told us that in Israel, rain was considered a blessing. That day, it was certainly a blessing for me. Thanks for sharing these moments with me. And remember to let this day belong to God.